revenue, we can borrow more. That's just the link between those two. Now, these are three that are in the LTP. These are required by statute, legislation. There are a number of other ones, but these are the three key ones that we specifically monitor because they're quite critical. And again, if we were to blow these, it would cause problems from our perspective. But they're called prudence ratios, and there are probably about 6 or 7 of them in the LTP, and we report on them annually. The reason I bring these to you is just so that you can get familiar with them, because they will be in the annual report, but it is just to give you the confidence that we do monitor against these quite closely. Currently, we're well on target with them. Then just some things that are coming up, particularly for new councillors, so that they can just be aware. In December, in anticipation of preparing the interim half-year accounts, which we start in January, we have to do fair value assessments of all our property, land and buildings, as well as restricted land and buildings, to ensure that there hasn't been a significant movement. We're just about through that process. It looks like we're fine, so we're okay for half year. Those councillors who've been here before will be aware that for the last 3 years we've had to revalue our property, land and building assets simply because of the movements in the markets for property in Auckland, and that has cost us at a group level about $750,000 a year. So we obviously are hoping to avoid that this year, but we at this stage, it's looking like we might need to, but it's an early indication. So we're hoping that the market will stay subdued, because that's what we really needed to do. And Audit New Zealand are actually busy doing the interim audit as well. They've been in since last month. And then in January and February, we produced the half-year group interim report. That is subject to a review engagement by Audit New Zealand. A review engagement, we'll talk a bit about that in some of the later papers, is it's not an audit, it's a lower level of assurance than you get from an audit, but it does give you some moderate assurance that the numbers are reasonable. So that it's negative assurance. Nothing will come to the audit's attention that would indicate that the numbers are wrong. So it's a different level of assurance, but we do that just to get assurance that the accounts that we do present to the NZX are reasonably accurate. And then on the 28th of February, we issue the announcement to and a media release to the NZX. Just a reminder, Auckland Council is subject to the NZX continuous disclosure requirements, and that means that if there's any sensitive market information that comes to our attention, we need to advise the NZX so that it can be released to the market. So we have a committee that oversees that, and Sue is on that committee and making sure that when if we have anything like that, that we do release it to the market. In our case, it doesn't happen often, but it can, and that's why it's important that if you're dealing with sensitive information, you need to be aware of that. And we will advise you if we're giving you information that's sensitive that should not be released, because that's quite critical. And finally, just to sum up, from a group perspective, I think you've heard from the CCOs as well. The strong group financial performance, capital expenditure is behind, both at council and at the CCOs. It's normally a slow start to the year, but we still at this stage are anticipating that we'll get to around the 80% mark. Our debt limits are within the parameters set, both by Standards & Poor's, as well as the prudential limits set in the LTP. And as Jenny mentioned as well, our credit rating was reaffirmed for both Standard & Poor's and Moody's at AA and AA2 respectively. I'm happy to take any questions.
Oh, Councillor Casey.
Francis, just on, this pie chart here with water care services having the 76-bit chunk of million. Can you tell me what the feasibility study for the central interceptor was that cost 4 million? And the comment, I'd like to make a comment about the bigger projects and how taking a little bit, I know that you're doing this to give us an overall picture.
Yeah.
But what it means is we lose sight of the whole, which is like Newcore and CRL and Amity and the central interceptor, because you've done that. So I don't know how that fits into the timeline for their budget and even what it was.
Yeah, if you want that information, we'll have to get it for you. We don't, because it's water care, we don't actually keep that detail. We only get I can get it for you if you want, or we can get them to provide you that.
We'll see in the other page where it says projects running behind schedule, mainly due to delays. I mean, which projects?
It would be mainly the ones that they've got in the current year. So if you were looking at water, it would be the ones that were specifically they were dealing with at the moment. So those would be over a number of projects will be running behind schedule.
Just mention through the chair, that was actually a question asked of the Chief Executive from Watercare at the time, and he did mention there's a lot of individual projects. If he wished to see the list, he could do that. It was due to things such as consenting issues, actually getting consent on time. It was due to the fact that they've actually decided to take a pause and review the project and make sure if there's new information to change the nature of what they're doing. So yeah, the individual CCOs can provide as much information around those as we do need.
Oh, I'd appreciate that.
For the water care?
Yep.
Okay.
Councillor Lee. Sorry, Councillor Newman and then Councillor...
I asked the question of water care before, and Brian Monk responding to it, but what's our weighted average cost of funds with water care in the group in terms of our borrowing? What are we paying?
It's about
5.4 from memory.
5.4% at the moment, yeah.
It's the average.
And they were at when
5.8.
they were at 5.8. So are we paying more? Sorry, a further follow-up question. Are we paying more now in terms of the weighted average cost of funds because they are part of that?
Fine.
If they weren't part of that, would we be paying less?
The question, yeah, as was actually stated by Brian Monk, I think at the time, was they do have shorter term loans than us. We've got a longer length. Debt maturity is longer for council than water care. That tends to push their rates up a wee bit based on when they actually pick those up. So, I mean, look, the overall portfolio, the program, I think the other thing mentioning is the guarantee, which actually changes the nature of that. When you did hear about the credit rating, that water care is just one peg below ours, that's because we actually guarantee.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I may just add to that, as you heard this morning, the standalone credit rating of water care, if you look at the Standard & Poor's rating reports, the standalone rating of water care is BBB versus council's AA. Kevin's point just then was the rating of water care moves to be one notch below Auckland Council due to the effect of our guaranteeing their borrowing. So the total average weighted cost of borrowing for the council group is 5.4, which is mainly Auckland Council parent. Standalone water care, their borrowings that they have, their average weighted cost is 5.8. Should council not guarantee their borrowing, and for clarity that is not contemplated for obvious reasons, that average weighted cost if they were borrowing in their own name on a standalone BBB rating without our guarantee would increase significantly.
So it would be over 6.
Yes, it would be significantly higher than that too.
Well over 6.
Councillor Lee.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that information, which is very comprehensive. My ears pricked up when I heard references to the HOP card in relationship to lower than expected revenue. If I heard that right, I think we need to be cautious about retailing explanations. The hop card was designed expressly to increase PT usage through the benefit of seamless journeys, obviously. The fact of the matter is, our main public transport service, which is bus, has been flatlining for nearly 18 months, and you can't blame that on the hop card. And so I think as a shareholder, we need to exercise a little bit more rigour when dealing with these sorts of explanations in regard to fall off in revenue in either one CCO or the other, but this one in particular, transport. Questions could be better focused on what happened to the patronage of the CityLink bus service, which was previously free. A charge was put on, and there was quite a massive fall off in patronage. So I'll make that point. Just be careful about retailing just so explanations. Thank you.
Just the debt to ratio, as in debt to asset, asset to debt ratio. Am I correct in saying it's about just under 25% with the 46,374 and the 11,569?
That is around the correct number. We don't tend to use that. Well, the credit ratings agencies don't really focus on that, simply because the security that our bondholders hold for council's debt is actually rates, because that's what their security is. A lot of our assets we can't convert into cash quickly, so they don't tend to use that as their guarantee for when they give us debt. So that's why we don't actually include that sort of information in the presentation, because it's not directly used as one of the key things in managing our debt limits.
If I may, through the chair, just the key ratio, just a reminder that the Standard & Poor's and Moody's monitor very closely is total debt, total revenue, for the reason that Francis just described, is that the security that the investors have is a charge over our current rating revenue and our future rates income. So they monitor the total debt, total revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. No more questions. I have a mover and I have a second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Kevin. Deborah, do you want to stay, Kevin? Yeah, Francis.
Good afternoon, councillors.
Welcome.
Thank you.